Let's imagine Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy walks into my office. I'm a therapist and she is my client. What do I see? A very beautiful woman. She's magnetic, closed, slightly untouchable. There's something about her that makes you want to understand her, like she's hiding something. More like there is a quiet, sensitive truth underneath that she's protecting very carefully. She sits down and says, "My marriage didn't work. I trusted too much. I shouldn't have married him, and now I don't know what to do." And yes, the story of Carolyn and John is a very much unique story. And yes, Carolyn is a unique woman. She has a unique story. A story that brought a man like John Kennedy into her life, a man that is powerful, visible, almost symbolic. But at the same time, it's not a unique story at all. This is a story that almost every person lives through at some point of their life. You enter a relationship or a marriage hoping for happiness, for love, for this is it feeling. But then at some point it starts to hurt. Because love is one of the most paradoxical experiences one can have. It can give you wings, and it can crush you just as deeply. My name is Christina, and you are watching Shrink Happens. Here we explore the psychological layers of the TV shows, movies, books, and the characters in them. But for today, let's go back to our client, Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy. Before we begin, I will give you a small disclaimer. This video and this analysis is based purely on the TV series Love Story. I am not very interested in rumors, gossips, and reconstructing what actually happened between these two individuals in real life. There's just too much noise online, there are too many conflicting stories, and they are not here to tell it themselves. But if we take the show on its own and separate it from the real people that it's based on and their story that happened in real life that we will never know, I think the show itself does a remarkable job. It shows the relationship in all its phases: the attraction, the hope, the disappointment, the breaking of illusions, and it does it in a very human way, even though the story itself is about extraordinary and famous people. We're going to move through this story in layers, starting from the layers that we see on the surface, then go deeper into patterns and mechanisms behind it, and eventually we will arrive at something even deeper. The level of personal, soul level transformation that the characters go through in the show. So let's start with the layer 1, the core conflict. In Love Story, the first layer that we see is the internal conflict that Carolyn Bessette has that keeps repeating throughout the show, especially at the very beginning. At the center is the need and the desire for love and to be chosen and to be in a relationship. And then there's a fear of losing herself in it. What was she really afraid of at the beginning? Not the commitment itself, but disappearing in someone else's world. Especially a world as powerful and consuming as John Kennedy Jr.'s world. In the series, we see that she is experiencing fears of being reduced to his woman, fear of public exposure and loss of privacy, fear that love will come with expectations that she will not be able to meet, and deeper than that, a fear that if she fully receives love, she will be controlled, defined, and trapped by it. So her inner split looks like this: I want to be chosen and loved by you, but I also don't want to be consumed. And you can see how it plays out at the very beginning, especially she wants love, she wants to be chosen, she wants to be special to him, but the moment it becomes real, she wants to escape. She becomes distant, critical, unsure, not because she doesn't feel, but because she feels and fears too much. Layer 2. Of course, it's not really about John. This is where we go a bit deeper. This is how Carolyn experiences closeness itself. Somewhere along the way, and of course it usually happens in the childhood, her system learned that love equals loss of control. Closeness equals risk. Being chosen equals pressure to become someone else. So instead of asking, will he choose me? Her deeper question is, if he does, what will I have to give up? And will he stay? And of course, the figure that she chose, John Kennedy Jr., with a powerful figure like this, everything becomes amplified. He's not an ordinary person. He brings status, legacy, public life, and everything that comes with it, pros and cons. Being with him is not just building a relationship with this person, it's entering a system. I would imagine that Carolyn in her session would think about whether or not she should have chosen a safer man for herself. For example, Michael. I think that happens to us when we struggle through a relationship that's not working. We'll look back and think, what if I chose a different person that perhaps was in my life at that time, who appeared like a much better, safer choice? But still, she didn't choose him. Instead, despite of all her fears, she still chose John. Which brings us to a very uncomfortable question. Why is it when a genuinely good, stable person comes along, something in us just doesn't switch on? Why do we feel more drawn to a complicated one, the uncertain one, the one that brings tension instead of ease? Isn't that what we all want? Have you ever experienced that? Why this happens is because she's not really choosing who is better. She is choosing, or you are choosing, what activates you. Michael, or a safe guy like Michael, represents stability, predictability, emotional availability. And as good as it sounds, it can feel flat, not urgent, not quite it. Almost like nothing is happening. And John, on the other hand, represents intensity, unpredictability, high emotional stakes. And that combination creates something powerful. It activates us, and this activation can feel like love, even if it's actually a mixture of anxiety, uncertainty, and desire and passion. Because here's the truth, we often choose familiarity over health, unfortunately. Familiar pain feels right, more right than unfamiliar peace. With Michael, there was less tension, less to fight for, less risk of losing herself, but also less emotional charge. With John, she can want him and resist him at the same time. Push and pull keeps the connection alive and intense, and it matches her internal world, so it feels real. Michael's offers peace, and John offers intensity that is often confused for love. And there's one more layer here. Being chosen by the special person, like John Kennedy Jr., isn't just romantic, it answers something deeper in us. Like, am I special enough to be chosen by this person? This kind of validation, of course, hits deeper than being chosen by someone who's just there and available. So it also becomes about what his choice means about her. With a safe option, safe person, it becomes harder, isn't it? You can't hide behind the distance. You can't escape into drama. They see you and they accept you for who they are. They don't walk away. You're actually seen, and that, if unfamiliar, can feel exposing. With John, the chaos creates the space to stay guarded. The focus will always stay on the relationship and not on her vulnerability. It's almost like you can always hide behind the mask. We're slowly arriving to the core truth. So in the end, she doesn't choose John despite her fears. She chooses him because he fits them. Michael fits the guy she says she wants. Private, calm, chill. But she doesn't choose Michael. She chooses John, who by default just cannot provide that to her. What a paradox. Of course, this mechanism didn't start with John or Michael. As I mentioned before, it starts usually in the childhood. It starts with what love felt like growing up. As a child, you don't learn love as an idea, you learn it as a feeling. If love felt calm and safe, then you learn how to trust calm and safe. That's like love experience for you. However, if love felt distant, confusing, or hard to get, that becomes your normal. That's what you think is love when you enter an adult world. So later in life, the good person can feel off, and the complicated one feels familiar. You recognize this, you recognize the feeling. And that's exactly what we see between Carolyn and John Jr. I never can get his name right. John Kennedy Jr. It's not that Carolyn wanted drama, it's just that drama felt like home. So the real question is, are we choosing the person or the feeling that we were always used to. How about you? Have you ever met someone who was actually good for you, but you just didn't feel it? Instead, you felt much more drawn to the person that made things harder for you. That's not random, that's learned. Doesn't mean you can fix it though. Let's move on. We're finally at my favorite part of this analysis, which is soul level transformation. Truth is though, before that, I know it's a bit contradictory because I was speaking about how she kind of chose the wrong guy for her, like maybe if she chose Michael, it would have been better. But truth is, I don't believe that we ever choose wrong partners. I think we always choose the partner we need. What I'm about to say might feel triggering, but please just stay with me. Because when you go through a soul-shattering, heartbreaking experience, which usually comes from love, a heartbreak, it gives you something that you cannot get any other way. It opens your eyes. There's a kind of truth that only becomes visible through a heartbreak, through crisis, and through disappointment. From a psychological perspective, of course you can say, yeah, maybe she made a mistake. Wrong partner, wrong choice, trauma patterns, attachment styles. But from another level, this relationship was not a mistake. It was an invitation to growth. We all live in a material world where we all kind of want similar things. Stable marriage, family, money, good job, health. The feeling that life is kind of working out for us. But in reality, and this is something that I see all the time, both in my practice and with my own experience and experience of people I love, life doesn't always unfold in the way that we expect. In fact, it often unfolds in the way that we didn't want, in the way that we feared the most. People get divorced, people get cheated on, you lose a job, you lose your health, things break, plans collapse. And suddenly you find yourself at the very bottom thinking, what now? How did I end up here? How did I not see this coming? And most people, and that's what we are taught, we try to live life in a way that we avoid pain, like a plague. Avoid loss, avoid bad thing happening. Like if something bad happens, it's your mistake. You should have done something differently. But you can't. I want to invite you to a different perspective. Perspective where you start to see that the hard things in life, the things that you would have never chosen if it was up to you, are not just accidents or punishments. The very thing that you are afraid of the most is often the thing that ends up transforming you the most. We resist seeing this. We label bad events in our life as mistakes, failure, loss, something that shouldn't have happened. Is the hardest experiences you go through is not the thing that breaks you. It's the thing that strips away everything false. And what we usually call as the bad outcome might actually be a beginning of a deeper clarity. One that we would have never reached if life went the way we planned it. Of course, growth doesn't look same for everyone. For some, growth is to stay in a relationship. For some, growth is finally leaving the relationship. For some, it's finally choosing themselves. For some, it's stepping on their ego. It's learning to truly see the other person just the way they are and learning how to love them. And from my perspective, and if you disagree, feel free to let me know. For Carolyn, that growth point was staying in the relationship. And for John too. To me, their union felt like a massive, energetic transformation field for both of them. That was the only thought I had when I was watching this show. I was in awe. I really liked it, I'm not gonna lie. But let's go back to the story. Here's the paradox. Why do we always choose people that cannot give us things that we want, or not in the way that we want? If we're honest, we usually know. At the very beginning, we usually know. There's a little tiny voice that kind of whispers, but we ignore it. We enter a relationship in a state of fusion, where everything feels magical and easy and meant to be. Even if the other person literally tells us or shows us, look, this is who I am. This is my family. This is how I organize my life. These are my bad habits. But we think it'll be different. We will work things out. It didn't work out for all of these people, but for us, it will. And then the reality hits and the fusion fades. Suddenly, we see each other clearly. And that's where the real relationship begins. And because this is usually where the crisis starts. And many relationships break at this point, and they never reach that love point. You never start relationship with love, even if you feel very intensely. It's never love. Love is something that you reach with this person once you really get to know them and go through a crisis together. And this is where I imagine another moment in Carolyn's therapy between us. She leans forward, tired, consumed by her thoughts, and she says something like, John just needs to change. He just needs to understand where I come from. This press, this life, this constant attention, it's not what I signed up for. He promised me. And I would highlight to her that instead of asking how did she end up here, why she chose John in the first place, she's saying things like, you are wrong. You need to change. You didn't give me what I expected. You saw the signs, but you chose him anyway. Or maybe your soul did choose him because it needed that lesson. It needed that experience. There's a lot of pain, heartbreak. You did promise, didn't you? The most heartbreaking thing is he did believe it when he said it. Under hormones, under projection, in a state of fusion, people can promise things and they don't lie. But that illusion will break, and that's what's gonna hurt so badly. It feels unfair. It feels like a betrayal. I feel like life is against you. But actually, this is the moment where life begins. Not the fantasy, not the illusion, but the real life. Real growth. Because through disappointment and through, and I love this word, disillusionment, where we lose the illusion, and that's painful, but it's also very clarifying. If a person goes through this consciously and they accept that invitation and they examine themselves and they go through that pain and they transform, something shifts. You move away from that inner child that demands, expects, blames, because that love that you didn't receive in a childhood, now that person must deliver it. Once you understand it, you start becoming more grounded, more separate, more responsible for yourself. You stop expecting the other person to regulate your emotions, your happiness, and your sense of worth. This does not mean accepting bad treatment. I'm not talking about this right now. It's about something more subtle. It's about growing up emotionally, becoming an adult that is responsible for their own life. And what we see in the series towards the end is something very interesting. They start turning back to each other. They begin to see each other clearly. And that could have been the beginning of something real. Not perfect, not easy, but real. But this is also the point where many couples break. Because it's easier to say, oh, this is just not my person. I will find that other person and it will be heaven with them. But it will never be. You have to build your own heaven. The pattern will repeat again and again until you learn the lesson. That the answer is always you. You taking responsibility for your own life and regulating yourself. It's nice to be with someone, building life with someone, but you gotta be responsible for yourself. Sometimes staying, working it through, seeing it through transforms you. Sometimes leaving the relationship does transform you. We all have a different lesson in life. Both can be growth, but one thing is true. From a soul perspective, this kind of relationship, as painful as it is, it's not bad luck. It's grace. Because it forces you to wake up if you accept that invitation. And yes, their story ended tragically. We didn't get to see what this relationship could become. But what I saw is this beautiful arc from attraction to illusion, to crisis, and to the beginning of acceptance. And somewhere there was a possibility of a real love. That kind of love that people reach together after years of staying, breaking, rebuilding, and growing together. And I know this series is controversial. Some people loved it, like me. Some people hated it. Fine. But this is how I saw it. And I wanted to share my perspective with you. Because if you're going through something similar, maybe it gives you another way to look at it, and that's all I hope for. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.